In this video, we're going to be using the remainder theorem to evaluate a polynomial. And here's the remainder theorem. It says if a polynomial, p of x, is divided by the factor x minus c, then the remainder is p of c. Okay, so if you've watched the video on synthetic division, then you're good to go here. If you haven't, you might want to go watch that first because we're going to be using synthetic division for these problems. Okay? Okay, so for this first problem, it says find p of -1 and also find the quotient and the remainder for this function. Okay, so one thing that we could do, we could just take that -1 and put it into the function and evaluate it. Okay, so let's try that. We'll put the p of -1 into this function in place of x. Okay, so p of -1 equals -1 to the fourth plus 2 times -1 cubed minus 3 times -1 minus 4. Okay, let's see what we get as an answer. If you raise -1 to the fourth power, you get +1. If you raise -1 to the 3 power, it remains -1, and -1 times 2 is a -2. These two multiplied give you 3, so plus 3, and then minus 4. Okay, so if you look at these, add these together, let's see, you will get a -2. Okay, so we found that when we put -1 into this function, we got -2 as an answer. Okay, that was the way that you should already know how to evaluate a function. Now, for the remainder theorem, it says that we can use synthetic division or long division and divide this thing, and whatever the remainder is will be the same answer as what we just got. Okay, so I'm going to divide this thing by -1. In synthetic division, the -1 is what I'm putting out front. And whatever the remainder is going to be, well, it's going to be this. It's going to be -2. Let's see if it actually works. Okay, so I'll put a -1 outside. And then on the inside, I'll put the coefficients and make sure there's none missing and make sure they're in the right order. Okay, 4, 3, we don't have an x squared term. There's the x to the 1 and there's the number. So I'll put a 0 for the x squared term. So x to the fourth has a 1, x to the third has a 2. There is no x squared term, so 0. X has a -3. And then our number out front, our constant, is -4. Okay, I'm going to drop down the first number. This was all explained in the video on synthetic division if you want to watch that. Okay, so drop it down, multiply these two. It gives you -1. Add these down, gives you 1. Multiply these two now, that gives you -1. Add this down, you get -1. Multiply these two, you get +1. Add these down, you get -2. Multiply these two, you get +2. Add these down, and you get -2. So what that tells us is that if I evaluate -1, I will get -2 as an answer, which we already knew was true because we plugged it into the function the old way by just plugging it in and getting an answer. But notice that these two answers are the same. Okay, so you can use synthetic division. Anytime you want to plug in a number to evaluate it, you can use synthetic division and just divide it by that number, and whatever the remainder is will be your answer. Okay, and the quotient here, right here, we just take this down by one number. Okay, so instead of x to the fourth, we're dividing it down to x to the third. So it'll be 1x to the third plus 1x squared, I'm not writing the ones, minus 1x or minus x, and then minus 2. That is my quotient, x cubed, x squared minus x minus 2. And the remainder and this evaluating will always be the same answer. Okay, let's do this one. So they're asking us to evaluate the function at 1. You can do that really quick if you want. If 1 was in the place of all these x's, then this would be 2, -3, 4, and -4. So it should be -1. Okay, but let's find out if that is the correct answer. So I'm going to put the 1 outside the box. I'm going to put the coefficients inside here and make sure there's no missing terms. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're good. So the first one is a 2. Next one is a -3. Next one is a -4. And the next one is a 4. Okay, so we drop down that first one and then start multiply, add, -1, multiply, -1, add, -5, multiply, -5, add, -1. So -1 is our answer. And if you remember a second ago, I said that if you replace all these x's with 1s, then the answer would be -1. And you can do that on your own if you would like. Okay, so the remainder and the function evaluated 1 are the same, and they're both -1. This one right here. The coefficient, you just drop this exponent by 1 and then use these coefficients. So this will be my x squared term, this will be my x term, and this will be my number term. Okay, so I go write those down. 2x squared minus x minus 5 is your quotient. Okay, let's do 2 more. Okay, so we ask the same question. So this time we're going to put a -2 out front. That's what we're evaluating. So we're going to try to find the remainder using synthetic division so that we can get the answer. Okay, so are there any missing terms? We got x to the 4, x to the 3rd, no x squared, and then an x and a number. So the x squared's missing. So I'll put a 0 there. This is a -1 for the first one. -4. There is no x squared, so I'm putting a 0. The number in front of here is a 1, and then we've got our 4 is last. Okay? I'm going to drop this down and then start the process. Multiply these two, you get 2. Add these two, you get -2. Multiply, you get 4. Add, you get 4. Multiply, you get -8. Add, you get -7. Multiply, you get 14. Add, you get 18. Okay, so P of -2 is equal to 18, as is our remainder. Okay, and the quotient, we're going to drop the exponent down by 1. It started with the x to the 4th, so this will be my x cubed term, x squared term, x term, and my number term. Okay, so I'll write that down. So we have -x cubed, not writing the 1, minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 7. Okay. Okay, for the last one, we've got this function, and we're asked to evaluate the function at -3. So instead of plugging in and getting an answer, I'm going to use synthetic division. I'll put a -3 out front. See if I'm missing any terms. I have x4, x3rd, x squared. There's no x term, so I'll put a 0 there. So the coefficient here is a 1. Here is a 2. Here is a -4. The x term's missing, so there's a 0. And then there's 4 for the number. Okay. Drop your first term down. Okay, and you get multiplied, you get -3. Add, you get -1. Multiply, you get 3. Add, you get -1 again. Multiply, you get 3. Add, you get 3. Multiply, you get -9. Add, you get -5. Okay, so -5 is our remainder, which is also the function evaluated at -3. Okay, and the quotient, you're going to drop this down by 1. So this is x to the 4th, so our first term will be x third, x squared, x, and a number. Write that down, and you get 1x cubed, or just x cubed, minus 1x squared, so minus x squared, minus 1x, or just minus x, and then plus 3. Okay, that's it for that, but I am going, if you want to hang on for a little bit longer, I'm going to evaluate this function at -3 by hand, okay, and make sure we got the correct answer. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to evaluate this thing by hand. So I'm plugging in a -3 everywhere I see an x in this function. So P of -3 is equal to -3 to the 4th plus 2 times -3 to the 3rd minus 4 times -3 squared plus 4. Hopefully this turns out to give us an answer of -5. Let's find out. Okay, so this is going to be positive because it's an even power. So a negative times a negative is a positive. If you do that again, it's also positive. So this will be a positive 81. If you work 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Okay, this is -27 times the 2. Do that in a second, but this is -27. Okay, this one is positive 9. And I'll do that multiplication in a second, and then plus 4. Okay, so you get 81. Let's see, that's going to be minus 54. Okay, minus 36 plus 4. Okay, let's add the negatives and the positives together. So the two positive numbers added up give you 85. And if you add these two up, you get 90. So minus 90. Okay, and 85 minus 90 is negative 5. So we evaluated the function the long way, but we still got the correct answer. This way is much shorter. Not always, but a lot of times.